I quit drinking last year. That has greatly reduced my diarrhea mouth when talking to people like you, or actually just talking to anybody.
Does it help because you said you have two kids?
Yeah.
Does it help when you have kids to quit drinking?
Yeah, I think so. I think now that I'm in that space, definitely. Absolutely 100%. The thing is I don't want to go down some like AA tangent, but
Yeah,
or get on
yeah,
some
totally.
soapbox. But like the thing is like we use drugs and alcohol or get a therapist or go to counselors for free and stuff like that. So when you first have kids, it's like, oh man, I am going to have the most gigantic glass of wine when those kids go to bed. But alcohol does all sorts of things, the next day that you don't realize. It makes it raises anxiety levels and it makes you more prone to, not everybody obviously, but it makes you more prone to yell or lose your temper. And it's so easy to be frustrated and tired all the time with kids that alcohol makes it worse.
My buddy's got a 1-year-old, and he basically quit drinking because he's also into running. He does ultras and things, and big into CrossFit. The guy, he's like just super healthy. He's like, yeah, one of the reasons I really cut back is I can't wake up at 5 a.m. or whenever it's going to be and have a hangover. But there was like a month ago, we all went out and he got hammered. And I was like, and the next day I'm like, how's today? He's like, this is the worst thing I could have ever done in my entire life. It's so bad. I'm like, yeah, that's why you're drinking athletic, whatever those beers are, those NAs.
I get those. You know how easy it is to get NA beers backstage on your rider?
I just did an interview and he was talking about the guy who's do you ever hear of Piebald?
Yeah.
Their tour manager. I just interviewed him and he was saying that back in the day they'd have beer and whiskey. Now they have like NAs in the rider.
Yeah, we still have the beer and whiskey because the other three guys drink, and we like to, share the wealth with opening bands and all that. I went to the Chicago Metro. We were doing the War on Christmas with the Lawrence Arms. They have like a full, like an old style club where they have like a green room attendant, and it's this really nice woman that like her job is to just make sure that room is dialed and everybody's happy. I was, sheepishly, I was like, hey, do you have any non-alcoholic beer? Just like, one or two, so I can have a beer on stage. It's just kind of a thing how I'm coping right now. She's like, yeah, let me go see what I got. And she came back with 30 various NA beers. She's like, yeah, so many bands have them on their rider now and they just leave them behind. So I'll just leave these here for you on ice. So then we played our next show at Bottom of the Hill just last week in San Francisco. And I was like, hey, NA beers. And it's like, boom, nobody's going to touch them. The opening bands aren't stealing them. It was just fantastic.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. I exercise kind of on and off, but mostly I get my cardio via practicing drums. I was talking to a friend that's a personal trainer, and I was like, man, like I can play for like 2 straight hours and it's super easy. And he's like, yeah, dude, you quit drinking. Like all your muscles and joints aren't, totally inflamed. And even if you have one beer, your body's still reacting and still has to recover from that. So what you could be putting into exercising, your body's putting into fighting, the soda you drank or the beer you had or whatever. And it like blew my mind. And that show that we just played at Bottom of the Hill, we played an hour set, 20 songs. And our encore was we got them to keep the bar open at the venue and we just hung out with everybody, which was fantastic. Best way to do things. But a good friend of mine was like, hey man, like at the end of the set, you were playing just as hard at the beginning. Like you sounded solid all the way through. And it's like, yeah, that's because I didn't drink like 4 shots of whiskey and 4 beers while I was on stage. Like I'm in great shape. And it really makes a difference. It's made a difference in how the whole band sounds. Because if the drummer sounds terrible, we're all going to sound terrible.
Well, you mentioned that you're in Florida. You guys all grew up in San Francisco Bay Area, right?
Yes. We, John, it's funny because when we first started touring, everybody's like, oh, you guys are from Berkeley. You're from Berkeley. Because we kind of leaned into that whole East Bay, Gilman, Berkeley thing. But Johnny's really the only one that is from and grew up in Berkeley. Ryan and Rory grew up in the East Bay. So like through the tunnel, it's still the East Bay, but it's like on the other side of the mountains.
How's this lead into you getting involved in the scene, like the punk scene?
I was in 7th grade. And you know how fast, like you look back and it seems like 7th to 8th grade is like this, you did 10 years worth of stuff in that period of time. But time moves so fast. Like I look back at the timeline and it's like, oh, I went from this to this to this so quickly. I had started playing drums, and I could play like rock beat number one, and I got a crash cymbal. So then I hit the crash cymbal, 3,000 times. This guy that I'd been friends with since grade school, we went to school, like I met him in first grade, and he was just kind of like a over there friend. We didn't have play dates or anything, but we would ride BMX bikes behind the school and stuff like that. He comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, dude, I heard you're the best drummer in the school." And I was like, I think I'm probably the only drummer in the school. And he's like, "That makes you the best." He's like, "We've got a punk band and we're playing at this guy's house. This week you should come play with us and we'll write songs and we'll have a band. We're called Homicidal Victim." And I was like, "Okay, cool." I'm wearing my Social Distortion shirt or whatever. And I was like, okay. So my mom drives me over to the house and we play music, and the guy's like on a whole other level than me. Like, he's just really good. That dude was Tony Sly from No Use for a Name.
Oh, wow.
I always knew, like, from a really young age that he was just phenomenal. We were in a band for like a couple years, and then he joined this band Anxiety and then No Use for a Name, and he was off to the races.
Wait, I didn't know he grew up in the Bay Area.
Yeah, he grew up in Los Altos, which is same as me. So yeah, his mom and dad still live in the exact same house that he grew up in. So like every time I go into my old town, I'm like, I drive by Montclair Elementary School, and then I drive up the hill and it's like, oh, there's Tony's house, Fast forwarding, Tony partly facilitated us being in like Fat Mike's, universe and awareness, because Tony loved my band. There's so many more to the story, and I'm jumping all over. I'm sorry.
I know, it's fine. No, it's good to remember, because I'll bring it back up when we start talking about Fat Records.
Tony has something to do with me being my first band, me joining American Steel, and then us being on Fat, which is wild. That kind of Tony had his hand in all that stuff. Starting to play punk rock music made me be like, well, I've got to listen to more punk rock music. I was listening to Billy Idol and just kind of like top 40 stuff, but I loved Billy Idol. And my older brother, Mark, says, hey, he's got this other band that he used to be in called Generation X. And he got a tape, like a cassette tape for me. And that like really blew my mind. I was like, oh, this is good music. I really like this. It's not as polished, and it is. It still holds up. It's great. At the same time, my best friend's older sister had bought Dead Kennedys In God We Trust, and went over to his house, and she played Nazi Punk's Fuck Off for us. And that just completely exploded our brains. We were like, what is this music? Like, they're saying all these swear words, they're saying stuff with meaning, and there were such good musicians. It was like so unattainable to like play drums like D.H. Pellagra or guitar like East Bay Ray or something like that. It was just fascinating to us. And that just snowballed into going to shows. Like, we went and saw DK in Palo Alto at the New Varsity Theater. And then it's like, oh, there's a flyer for this other band. They're called Black Flag. Never heard of them. Let's go see them. And it's like, how could you not get into the punk rock scene, like, if that's your introduction to it?
I can't imagine seeing those bands back then when they were doing their thing.
It's the same as like the first time you went and saw Against Me. It's like, well, actually, no, because Against Me could play their instruments and they sounded good. Like Up Ivy's shows back in the day were terrible.
Really?
Like their sound, like, have you ever heard their live recordings? They're like miserable. Like they could barely, they were really good, but they weren't that great. And then like we saw Crimpshrine like 3,000 times probably. And they were always on borrowed gear and everything's out of tune and stuff. And that's probably why our first record sounds the way it does, but we can get into that later.
Was 15 from your San Francisco?
15 is Jeff Ott from Crimpshrine.
Yes, that's right. That's okay. That's why I always get that mixed up, because I know those names and I always forget that he was in both.
And Jeff Ott's like still around. Like he's still around, just being kind of like a scene elder, hanging out with bands and stuff.
So you're seeing all of these bands, and then so how do you get then involved? Like, how does American Steel come together?
After playing with Tony, and he went on a no use, that was, it was gone. Like that jam session was done. But I just had other friends, and we would just play in the garage. And I got into it with a guy that like played thrash, and we kind of played some this and that. I was just like searching. I was like, I want to be in like a good, real band. Remember when we used to have newspapers, like music newspapers like BAM, we had the SF Bay Guardian, and in the back you could post free, musician wanted ads. And I saw this ad, East Bay punk band seeks drummer, Influences are Crimp Shrine and Linda Ronstadt. And then a phone number, which, if I'm not mistaken, is still Ryan's phone number. So I called, and it was 1996. American Steel formed in 95, which I can tell you about how that all happened as well. But it was 96. I went out Rory's mom's house way out in the East Bay, and we played for a couple hours, and we all got along really well. And then nothing happened. The beginning of 97, Ryan calls me up. He's like, hey, do you remember like we jammed and blah, blah, blah. You want to come try again? I was like, yeah, sure. And then it totally clicked. It was like, these are the guys I want to play with.
Well, why didn't it click the first time?
Because like American Steel, our whole lives, like we can't get out of our own way. They probably like auditioned me, and then we're like, well, this guy we're using is fine, and he lives close. He's not that bad. It's working, whatever. So then I think Ryan just kind of got to the point where he's like, we need to go on tour. This guy doesn't want to tour. This Scott guy that we met has all the gear, and he wants to tour, and he's eager. And so it just kind of was like, yeah, let's make this happen. But in between that time, let's go back to Tony. I got this demo tape, which was 4 songs after that became the first 7-inch American Steel put out. But I had this demo tape, and I would go play it for friends. But one of the people I went and played it for was Tony Sly. And he sat and listened to songs, and we fast forwarded, kind of going through, the like 12 songs that were on the demo. And he's like, if you don't join this band, you are stupid. This band is phenomenal. He's like, this tape isn't very good, but these songs are brilliant, and you need to join this band. So like, okay, Tony, like I was kind of like, okay, buddy, sure. But he was right. Like Rory had something going on there. That was like Tony's second input into like me being in the music scene.
He's also like trying to get rid of you. It's like he's setting you up with someone else because he wants to go date somebody else, you know?
I met this friend from church. You should really like maybe go have coffee with them.
They seem like such a better match.
Yeah, he didn't have to get rid of me. I mean, he was so firmly in no use, like they had already, I think that was that was after they had done Leche con Carne, so they were huge. They were already huge, so it's not like Tony needed to get rid of me. He was just being a supportive scene guy. So he was willing to take a half hour out of his day to meet up with his old friend to like listen to a demo.
Okay, so then you get in the band, and at this point, when does the self-titled come out?
98.
98, so that's on New Disorder Records.
Yeah, on New Disorder. So that was the first 7-inch came out in New Disorder. And that's, again, American Steel kind of just like happened into that. Like the guy that ran New Disorder was like, hey, I have a label. Do you guys want to do a 7-inch? It's like, yeah, sure. And they did this. They already had the songs recorded. So they're like, here's the 4 best songs off of it. And they put the 7-inch out. And then when I joined the band, Ryan was very clear. He's like, we want to play shows. We want to be best friends. We want to go on tour. This is what we want to do. We want to be in a band, but it's all about the 4 of us and our friendship and camaraderie. We are like a team. I was all in. I was like, okay, this is exactly what I want to do.
It's funny when I work for myself, and when you start doing that, you get all these success books or business books, and they're like, you need a mission statement. And I'd always heard companies that I worked for prior to working for myself saying that, and I was like, that sounds so stupid. It's like mission statement, values. But really is, if you have something that's put together and it has a clear vision, like he said, that's what you just lean back on. You're like, all right, well, this is what we agreed on in the beginning. So are we straying from that? This is what our vision is. So let's steer our way back to that. Do you feel like him saying that to you has kept you guys together for so long? I mean, I know there's been a gap, but do you think that was like pretty good glue for you guys?
Well, of course, yeah. And the thing that made American Steel is that it was about the hangs. At first, getting together to play music was kind of what jump-started just hanging out together. It's like, oh, the guys are going to, way before I was in the band, Rory's like 17 years old. It's like, well, we're going to get together and drink some beers and play music. And the catalyst for all that was we have to meet at 2 o'clock to play music. And then it would go till, 3 o'clock the next morning with, whatever shenanigans were going on. So it's always been, and I think it's pretty clear with our band that we're not about like trying to be popular or trying to make a living playing music. We're not trying to, get big and do a music video. We've never done a music video. It's about the hangs and the friendship and camaraderie along the way that is really what's held us all together. And then trials and tribulations. Ryan got cancer. We got together before, oh my God, it was like, and we can get in this with like record by record, but we signed to Lookout, booked studio time with Kevin Army, and Ryan got diagnosed with cancer.
Okay, so I mean that's pretty much where we're at in the timeline right now. So because it says 99, you guys do Rogues March with Lookout, but I thought 2001 is when he got diagnosed.
No, 99, like March or April of 99.
How old was he?
23, I think, 22 or 23.
God, that's scary as fuck.
Yeah, and then like the treatment is so much better now. We were talking to doctors and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, they only have like a 15 to 20% success rate in curing this. And he beat it. You know, he did 6 months of chemo, you know, inpatient, and then did like oral chemo. We did a tour while he was taking chemo.
Oh God.
Oral chemo. There's so much. But the new disorder thing was a real. We should go back to that first record because Aaron's Two ran New Disorder, for all of his faults, really kind of knew actually what we needed to do. Like, he took me aside. He's like, look, you got to get these guys to buy some tuners. Like, they need to go get tuners and tune like between songs, and you got to tune like when you record. And then he also had like a list of phone numbers for booking contacts to go on tour with. And then we had another thing that they called the East Bay list, which wasn't the Steve list thing, like the list that, you know, had all the shows. It was a list of like phone numbers that had been crossed out and added on to, and it was just like 3 sheets of paper. And that's how we booked our first tours, was just like him saying, well, if I'm going to put a full length out for you, you guys need to tour on it. I need you guys to go on tour. So we kind of like stumbled into doing a DIY tour that way. You know, we said, like, he's like, okay, well, who do you want to record this record? And we just immediately all agreed that Kevin Army was the guy. He had just come off doing Insomniac by Green Day, but he did Crimpshrine and Op Ivy and Mr. T Experience and Sweet Baby and all these like epic East Bay punk bands. So we're like, well, if we're an East Bay punk band, that's the guy that needs to engineer and produce our record for us. And he took us from being like this kind of scrappy, didn't know what to do with ourselves band to like maybe being a real band. You know, like knowing how to operate in a recording studio, and our whole sound changed. Look, we got this bigger sound after working with them because we're just like, oh, this is our sound. This is what is actually working with it for us. That was super helpful to go in with like such a legend and somebody who'd done really small projects all the way up to like that Insomniac record that he worked on for like 3 straight months or something. And I still talk to Kevin and stuff like that. Like he's totally out of the music business. He does vintage record stuff now, but I still bounce things off of him once in a while because he's just such like a legacy guy.
Well, when he was telling you all this stuff in the studio, was there any pushback by you guys, or did you guys just take it in and say, oh wow, okay, great?
Oh no, he could do no wrong in our eyes. You know, we were like, holy crap, we're recording with Kevin Army. Like, we've seen this guy's name on the back of every record growing up. But then there were like Kevinisms. I was like, do I need to learn how to play to a click track? He's like, nah, you don't need to. This is punk rock. You don't need to play to a click track. And it's like, go back and listen to that record. It's like, yeah, dude, you really needed to learn to play to a click track. You know, he would say things like, I was tuning my toms up when we got into the studio. And they were really high because I was tensioning them. And he goes, oh, those are melodious. And I didn't realize that was a Kevinism for like, those sound like shit. I kind of left him like that. So our first record, buried in the mix whenever I do a tom fill, they're like really high pitched toms. But he would do things like Rory would walk out of the ISO booth doing vocals, and Kevin had water bottles. And if it wasn't good enough, he'd throw a water bottle at Rory. And Rory would like creep back in and go redo his take. But we would hammer it out. We did 17 songs for that first record. I did 13, where we did almost complete songs that first day in the studio. We did 13 songs.
Did you guys record live, or?
We recorded live, and then we would do a little bit of overdubbing for Rory's guitars, but there was no like cleaning things up in the mix. You either got your take or you were happy with the take you got. So like I can point out mistakes that I made where it just changed the song. It's like, well, that's the song now. Because you didn't really we were recording to tape, and tape was like $200 or $300 for a reel of tape. So it's like, yeah, you get what you get, dudes.
How many songs from that record do you guys still play?
0. Yeah, so the first record we could play pretty much like if we sat down in band practice and Rory, started playing a song, we could probably hammer through it and basically play the song and then like maybe practice it once or twice and play it live. But the people that really want to hear those songs are very, very vocal and very few.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. That was my next question of how many people are like, why don't you guys play the old song?
Like three. There's like three people. And Ryan was really funny. A couple shows ago, somebody's like, play some old stuff. And Ryan's like, they're all old.
Yeah.
Like our last record came out in 2009. Everything is old.
Yeah, except for the song you guys have out, those two songs you have out that you did 2018.
Oh, yeah. Well, I always forget about that because it's not an album. Like 7 inches are always so forgotten. But it was going to be, but then COVID happened. So yeah, that first record we went and then just like toured and played. We kind of honed in how many local shows we would play. Like we used to just play everything, parties and whatever. And then we kind of honed in like, let's not overplay our hometown. Like if we're going to play a show, it needs to be, an hour or 2 hours away, and then, branching out into doing longer tours and stuff like that. And that works to our benefit because you can then go to a record label and be like, well, we've done 5 tours already. And this is what we do.
Well, did that help you guys with Lookout?
Yeah, again, people always say in all businesses, it's all about who you know. And yes, it is, because every time we've gotten onto some record label or in with a booking agent or whatever, it's because we knew somebody. But you also have to be kind of good. We would kind of like run our course with New Disorder Records, and the guy running it was just like not really aligning with our morals or ideals so much. We're just like, let's just email Lookout. So they used to have a record store under their office, and I went into the record store and just kind of like chatted, and I found out the guy Dan that worked there liked our band. And I was like, oh, like, do you think Lookout would ever put a record out for us? And he's like, I don't know, man, but I love your band. I was like, okay, cool. So he gave me Chris Applegren's email, and then John composed like a nice email saying, hey, we're American Steel, blah, blah, blah. And he emailed back like a day later, like, sure, send me a demo. And we're like, whoa. And then all of a sudden we had signed a deal, which was, whatever. It's not like a big record contract, but they're like, hey, we'll pay to put out a record for you guys.
Did it seem surreal? I know, because I mean, back then that was one of those labels that was pretty known.
Yeah, well, it was, to me, it was mind-boggling. Like I was calling all my old friends like, dude, we're going to put a record out on Lookout. Like when they said we want to do a record for you, I didn't sleep that night. I was so giddy and so excited. All of my favorite records growing up or in bands that I saw were all Lookout bands or Alternative Tentacles or like Fat, right? But I was really in the Lookout stratosphere with all those bands. It was mind-boggling because, oh my God. And then we go to the record label and they give us like a tour and they're showing us photo albums and stuff like that. It was really surreal.
What was the deal they gave you? Was it an actual contract or was it a handshake?
No, it was a contract, which I probably still have somewhere, but super fair. We're going to give you X amount of dollars. And it was a crazy amount of money. It was like $3,000 to record our record, which blew our minds. Like, oh, what? Do you know we could record a record for like $75, right? It was, a huge amount of money to us. One record, it needs to be 10 songs and 30 minutes, kind of classic deal. And then the way we got out of our contract with them is in the deal, they had to always have 2 formats available, CD and vinyl, CD and cassette, and then as time moved on, digital. That was actually how, because they then only had digital and they didn't have physical copies of our records, so we were able to get those back from them.
Oh, so when you guys signed them, well, I guess because you do 2 records, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but did they have a specific record deal, how many to do, or did they said you can just come back and sign a new contract?
Yeah, everything was one. And so we were very well versed being in like the hyper educated East Bay, about the music scene, and watching bands like Green Day and Rancid, mostly Jawbreaker, kind of fall apart after going to a major. We knew like, hey, we're not signing some dumb record deal where it's like, oh, you got to put 5 records out or whatever. We were like, no, we're doing 1 record. And it was like a 60-40 split or something like that, which is super fair. And I think that's what it was. It was something really, really fair in our favor. And then it was really basic. Like, you're not going to record anything else for another record label for a year. This is your music, you own it, but we have the rights to release it, blah, blah, blah. Super simple, and maybe like a 2-page contract.
How did you like being on the label? Did they, when the record came out, and did you see that they had good distro and they were good when you guys were on tour?
Oh, yeah. It was phenomenal because they had Green Day money still coming in.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the ship wasn't on track, but certainly wasn't sinking by any means. We had never experienced a publicist, and she was getting us interviews, and we were getting, write-ups in bigger and bigger magazines and stuff like that. And that was just mind-blowing to us. So it really expanded, our reach, but also there was no digital music, right? So Lookout would release a record and people would buy physical CDs. We released Rogue's March and it was like 10,000 copies sold within like 6 months. And I couldn't even imagine selling 10,000 records now. Nobody buys records. We're like, yeah, we pressed 350 of this vinyl, hope it sells out. We got like our first like real royalty because our album recouped because we recorded it so inexpensively in the grand scheme of the Lookout world. The album recouped and we all got like royalty checks. And we're like, this is the way it's going to be the rest of our lives, guys. No.
We'll do this for the next 50 years and not burn out, and we'll be rich.
Turns out we still are doing it. We're just still not making any money. But that's not what it's about. Again, it's about the hang. As long as we're not losing money. So Lookout signs us. We inked the contract. We all went physically into the office, all 4 of us together, and signed the contract together, which is super cute and very classic American style, everything done together. We're talking to Kevin Army. Okay, when are we going to schedule this, recording? And then Ryan gets diagnosed with cancer, and we're like, oh, what do we do? And Chris at Lookout was like, don't worry about it, guys. Do what you do. We can void this contract. We can keep going with the contract. Whatever works with you, we're here for you. And so that was super cool. That's like the human, what like a bro Chris Applegren is. And so we recorded Rogue's March in pieces. If you're familiar with how like chemo works, it's like you go in and do your chemo and then you're like really sick for X amount of time. For Ryan, it was like 5 days. He'd just be like dead to the world, just at home trying to eat and recover. And then he'd have like a 1-week period where he was good and like had a lot of energy. And we would finagle in little recording, session times to go do it. Because we didn't do things like, oh, well, maybe like we can track a song without Ryan here. Rory could do some guitar overdubs. Like, that's not the way it was. All 4 of us were in the studio or we weren't in the studio. We would do like little weekends here and there. So it took longer to record the record. But fortunately, it was such a small budget. It was really only like 3 or 4 kind of little patches that it took us to actually get the record nailed down.
Was there any, I don't know, just something about the name of the record and him going through that? Was the album named that? Was there something in the name of that because of he was going through that and took you guys such a long, I guess I'm thinking March to get to the end? Or
No, that's interesting because we totally like roll with that. But for one, Ryan, it's never been like his identity. Like, oh, I have cancer. You see like people posting on social media. It's like, I get it, dude, you're sick. But it wasn't. Rogue's March is kind of like the cover of Rogue's March is from the funeral procession for the Haymarket riots in Chicago. There's so much history in Rory's songwriting in those early days. But that was basically kind of like just like union marching and marching for civil rights and equity in the world. And the song Rogue's March, we always said like, oh, we don't want a title track. And then we always end up with a title track. Yeah, it just came from the song Rogue's March. The original title of the album was actually going to be Bloody Murder. And the song Bloody Murder was called A Tear Away. And then Lookout was like, so we don't really want to put like, any pressure on you to do anything, but do you really want to call your record Bloody Murder? And we're like, yeah, I guess if we're doing it on Lookout now, maybe we should be a little more serious about this. So then it just kind of like the 11th hour change to the song.
I never realized how much labels would. I've heard a couple times where like Link 80, they did something and Mike Park was like, I don't know about this. Or I've heard Fat Mike from Fat, giving his 2 cents on things. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but it's funny to me. I feel like just kind of the DIY labels would just let you run with it, but you don't realize that they're running a business and they're like thinking business wise of we need to sell this shit, man.
And also, like, Chris at Lookout was a band guy. Fat Mike is Fat Mike. Like, he obviously knows his way around a record.
That's true.
But when we were recording Rogue's March, like I said to Chris, I was like, hey, we're going to be at Roof Brothers, next Saturday or whatever. If you want to come by. He's like, no. I don't want to go by. I want to hear the final product. You guys do your thing. Like, he was very hands off with it. He wasn't like producing or anything like that. He's like, you guys record your record and do what you guys do best. But I think like maybe the publicist kind of got in his ear and is like, if I want to get this in Spin magazine, like Bloody Murder, maybe, if it was now, like whatever, call it Bloody Murder. But back then it was like, maybe not.
When the record comes out, it's got Lookout slapped on the back of it, and you start going on tours. Does that help you guys?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, first, just being like, hey, we're from the East Bay. We used to really lean into like, we're from Berkeley, Ryan and Rory work at Gilman. That was just like a thing that got us, because we were mailing cassette tapes to people to book these shows. So it was a long process to do DIY tours. But then Lookout just has, and the same with Fat, it's just this built-in, people automatically buy the records that come out on that label, before they even listen to it. And we got a booking agent pretty shortly after signing to Lookout. They helped us kind of get involved with somebody. But yeah, you definitely use every advantage you can get. It's not like you're name dropping or something. It's like, yeah, we're on Lookout Records. That gives you a little bit of a cash to get a show. And then 6 people show up to see you play.
I did an interview with this guy Wiley from the Sort of Jelly Beans, and their first tour was with the Vandals, and then the next tour was in Guttermouth. I go, is that just how it went from the whole time? He's like, oh no. He goes, and then we started playing all the shitty shows. I was like, yes, okay.
Even those shitty shows, like, and we always had this mindset: would you rather be home working at Cinderblock printing T-shirts, which is where a lot of people worked? A lot of band guys worked. Would you rather be at Cinderblock printing T-shirts, or would you rather be, having beers with these 6 guys that just watched us play and then going back to their house to crash in their basement or whatever? Like, this is still more fun than being home working. We still stoked out 5 of those 6 people that saw us play are maybe going to be fans forever. And then you just hope the guy that's promoting your show actually put up at least a couple flyers so those kids would see it, because it's not like you're shooting them a text message, to say, hey, we're going to be coming through Lawrence, Kansas or whatever. And man, we would go, like, I was just talking to Rory last week. We were all hanging out rehearsing for the show. We were talking about this one time we roll into Worcester to play a show, and it's like this big warehouse. And it's just like, there's nobody around. So Rory's like, okay, I'm going to go in and just see what the vibe is, and he goes in and they're playing our CD or whatever we had sent them. And he's like, hey, so we're supposed to play a show here tonight? The guy's like, yeah, we don't have any show tonight. Who are you guys? And Rory's like, American Steel, this band you're playing right now? Yeah, there's no show tonight. Sorry, guys. So he just like walks back out to the van, and then we just drive, some friend's house. It's just like stuff like that happened so often because you just couldn't communicate back and forth. Like, you got a show confirmed and you're like, okay, we'll be there August 3rd at 7 p.m. And you just hoped that it would work. And it usually did. Like 95% of the time it did. But the real memories are like those shows where you're like, wow, we just drove 9 hours to get here. And the guy, not only is it a bad show, it's just a non-existent show. Like, they didn't even book it for you. Or there's times, like we would roll in and something wouldn't work, or a club, a venue had been shut down, and then the kids in the neighborhood or the community all rally together like, okay, well, we got a generator, so we're going to go play at this public park. And you'd play some rad show at like a gazebo in Flagstaff or whatever, and it's like, it worked, and we're here to play. And again, it's about the friendship and the hangs. So we did what we set out to do. Maybe it wasn't at a venue, and maybe we didn't make any money, but we set out what we meant to do.
What were you guys like on the road? It sounds like you got along and you'd show up and play and then just go drink a bunch of beers afterwards and rinse repeat.
Yeah, beer was our fuel. Yeah, that's really, we did get along really well. And fast forwarding to like why I got kicked out of the band for a short time was my inability to manage interpersonal relationships. You just got to sometimes just deal, like know that this person does this and it's just a known quantity. But when you're young, you like get pissed off about things. And when you're the drummer and not the guy that writes the songs, you're the one that gets gets the boot, right? But that was fine. That's all water under the bridge.
What year was that?
2000. So this goes back to Rogues March. So we got in with this booking agent, and she's like, okay, what do you want to do? And we're like, we basically want to tour. We'll like tour for a month, come home for a month, tour for a month, come home for a month, just to get like a break, 2 weeks to 4 weeks home to take a break and recoup, make some money at our part-time jobs, and then go back out and do it all over again. And we weren't making money on those tours, but we weren't losing money, which was how we were able to just keep doing it. We didn't have tour support from Lookout or anything, but we were not losing. And also gas was like $1 a gallon, but we weren't losing money on those tours. We were selling just enough shirts and CDs to make our way. So we just toured our butts off. And I think it just got to the point where Rory was like, something's got to give, and he needs to not be around me anymore.
Were you guys just at each other's throats?
Yeah. And I refused to like back off on giving into things. It's like, and I didn't realize like everybody has their place and everybody has their roles. Well, Ryan and I are under the van, replacing the brakes or an alternator or something, and Rory's not helping. I'm mad about that. But conversely, at 4:30 in the morning when he's up writing Sons of Avarice and I'm sleeping, he's not mad at me for that. Everybody has their place and their thing that they do in the band, and I just didn't like really grasp that back then. I just felt like, oh, you're not doing anything. And I didn't respect the fact that he was the talent and putting his heart into writing those songs.
Are you on tour when you get kicked out, or are you home?
No. It's funny. Ryan still says this is like one of the worst things he ever had to do. So Ryan got sick with cancer, and I was kind of like, oh, what are we going to do? The day after he tells me, I got approached by somebody with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society to do like tech support for their bike events, because I worked in bicycle stores. And so I had kind of leaned into like my volunteer work with Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And I was driving down to Tucson to do an event, and he called me. We had cell phones at that point, and he calls me on my phone, and he's like, oh, you're going down to a TNT event. Okay, I'll call you on Monday or whatever. We'll talk. And I was like, no. What's up, man? And he goes into a spiel, that he had pre-planned to tell me about how I wasn't in the band anymore. And I'm like, Ryan's like, dude, you were going down to do this volunteer work that you started because I was sick, and then I'm kicking you out of the band, and then you took it like no big deal. It totally crushed my ego and crushed me. But, again, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a really long period of time. Like for me joining the band in 97 to being kicked out in 2000, it's like 3 years. It's like such a small little blip on the radar.
Yeah, but still though, at that age, you're touring, you're on Lookout. Those are big things. So that's all going into the backpack of, oh, this is my identity now. And then they strip it away from you and you're kind of lost.
Yeah, and if we had just stopped to like, everything would have been totally different, because I was also really a driver for the band. Still am. Like, we need to do this, let's do this. Things would have been different if we had just stopped and talked and had like a little therapy session with each other and kind of worked things out. But me not being in the band also kind of paved the way for Rory to write and perform the songs in Jagged Thoughts, which were a lot more complex, and I would have pushed back on really hard.
Yeah, there's a big difference in the sound between those two records, I felt.
Oh, and people were like, what the fuck is this album?
Well, it's so much more chill.
Yeah, and it was like, it was just where Rory was at, Rory, we're not writing songs to appease to anybody but ourselves. We write these songs, and if we don't like it, we go, I don't really like that. And if we like it, we're like, yeah, that's great. But we're never thinking like, what is the crowd going to think? How are we going to play this live? Like, whatever, we'll figure it out later. Like, we're just doing, it's just the four of us in a room, and this is what comes out.
I said to point out one thing really fast. It's just, you said that you or how'd you word it? That you're the one who champions the band. Okay, we got to play these shows and things like that. So I've found that typically the person who's running the Instagram account these days is that person for that band.
The band historian.
Everyone who I've talked to is basically been the person who's run the Instagram, and they're like still like they're putting the post, they're doing all this stuff. So it's just funny because that's exactly what it is. So when you said that, I was like, yeah, that totally makes sense that you'd be running Instagram.
Well, it's like, I guess if you're the one that's motivated enough to do like some stupid social media content creating, you're probably also the one that's like, hey, if I'm going to be making these stupid posts on Instagram, can we at least play a show to show for it?
Yeah.
But it also, like, I've always been kind of the band historian because I grew up working in a camera store. So I always had like a point and shoot camera. So I was always taking pictures to the point where Ryan and Rory would be like, dude, enough with the pictures. But now they're like, oh man, these old pictures, they're great. And then living in Silicon Valley, I lived in Palo Alto at the time. I was always in bartending. I was always around these people that were like, hey, check out our new this and that, check out Friendster, check out MySpace. And then it was Facebook. And so I was always kind of one of the first people onto those things. So it just made sense, like, to make band accounts. Like, I made an American Steel account on Friendster, even though it was, supposed to be for people. So they just kind of, like, I guess I just kind of fell into it. Me creating an Instagram account for American Steel was totally calculated. It's like when they called and were like, hey, let's maybe like do another record or something. I immediately created an Instagram account and started putting old pictures and stuff like that up, just because it's like, well, I guess this is the way bands are now.
I love that shit. I love social media for bands can be done so fucking well. It just because you have an audience who wants to know about you. There's such an opportunity, especially you're on the road, you're playing a show, you'd be backstage, do a live, and just be like, hey, what's everyone drinking? Whatever it is, because people want to see that, and they want to. I don't want to say like they want to absorb the content because it makes it so robotic, and I hate that. They truly are interested. They're invested in the band, and they want to see that.
Yeah, well, and it's I don't know what it's called. When you're you feel like you're friends with a podcaster, or you feel like you're friends because you're so absorbed in their social media, you know everything about them. It's called something.
Stalking.
Yeah, leave your ideas down in the comments. But like, I always want to post, I want to post stuff at the shows like, oh, hey, here's Corey setting up merch, and look, Ryan's tuning his guitar. But it's like, it's so much.
Stories are good for that because stories will delete in 24 hours. And that's perfect for that stuff.
Yeah, but I've got to get them up. And it's like,
true.
you're so, when you're in show mode and you're kind of starting to get in that headspace of like, okay, I've got to get the sound check, and then we've got to do the show. Posting to social media just seems like a distraction none of us really want. I would love to have somebody that toured with us that just did that. Like, hey, I'm your merch guy, and I'll do all your social media. It's like, cool, great. But I like the interactions. Like, you just messaged me like, hey, want to do this? Yes, cool. And it's like, now we're buddies.
Yeah.
That's what I like about the social media side of things.
So with Jagged Thoughts, you record on that album or no?
No, I did not. So we had started the way we used to write. We'd be on the road, and Rory would be like, hey, I got this song that I've been kind of in my head, and we'd kind of work on it a little bit. So there were songs on Jagged Thoughts that I had worked on or we had demoed. So I was kind of part of the record, but I wasn't part of any of the real recording at Sharkbite for the session. So like, yeah, when I had to go back, and when we got back together in 2007 and I had to go learn the songs off of Jagged Thoughts, I was like, oh yeah, I remember playing this one. I wrote this drum part. It's not going to be that hard to learn.
Wait, so were you out of the band until from 2000 to 2007?
So yeah, because the band, it was like November of 2000 that I was out of the band. And then like a year or 2 years later, they had their last show, which there's a whole story about why we think last shows are stupid. So they did a last show, and it was Rory had this whole concept where he made it like a wake or a funeral, and there was flowers all over the place, and he had a little pamphlet, like in memoriam and everything. It was really clever, but bands should never play last shows. Is it ever forever? I mean, unless like the person in the band is like a, serial sexual assaulter or something like that, like, or just a sexual assaulter in general. The band is eventually maybe going to get back together. Quit having these final tours. Like, do you really think NoFX isn't going to play another show? Or the Refused. Oh, the Refused, you're playing your final tour again. Cool, guys. So we think that's stupid. But the band effectively broke up and put together the side project or their full-time project, Communiqué.
That's okay, because I read that in Wikipedia and I remembered that happening, but it doesn't clearly say why on your Wikipedia, which is confusing. But I was like, I remember this happening, but I don't know what the fuck this means.
I should have my social media guy get into that Wikipedia thing.
Well, it said, well, let's see, saw the band tour in U.S., Canada, including appearances South by Southwest and CMJ. The third full-length Jagged Thoughts followed in 2001, and then it goes, following this, American Steel changed their name and sound in 2002, becoming Communique. But it doesn't say why.
It's just where Rory's head in songwriting and what he was interested in was just steering in less and less of a American Steel sound. So he was like, I have this material, but I can't record it as American Steel because people will really lose their shit if they hear this, with synths and stuff like that. So they were just like, let's just shelve American Steel and do this for a while. And there was also a little bit of like maybe jumping on that like dance poppy bandwagon that was going on back then.
Oh, yeah, that was when, like, fucking Head Automatica and all that came out, like disco punk.
So they were, yeah, total disco punk. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, there was a little bit of that. It was never really exactly what everybody wanted to be doing. And then things kind of switched and Rory was writing more American Steely sounding songs again. There's an entire unreleased Communiqué record that they were just like, wait, these songs are actually like really American Steel songs. So let's like trash this like synth pop and like do it the right way. So yeah, Ryan sent me a text and was like, "Hey dude, would you be interested in like maybe doing an Am Steel record, maybe a tour or something like that?" And I just one word response, yes. And then so he called me. He's like, "Let's meet for dinner." 3 or 4 days later, he and I went out and had dinner and got drinks and stuff like that. And we're like, "Yeah, man, this is what we all want to do. Let's do it."
What did you do that whole time?
So me, I just sat at home.
Just was a really dark place.
So no way, man. So that's totally not my personality though. Like, oh, you're gonna do this to me. I'm gonna do better now. I did all sorts of stuff. I formed a band almost immediately with the guy that owned New Disorder Records and this woman Erica, who is still one of my bestest friends. She was playing bass, and then her and we did 3 tours with that band with Ernst and 3 records. But then Erica and I kept playing together. We did a local production of Hedwig and the Angry Inch, playing like 6 straight weeks of sold out shows just based on the fact that everybody, like Hedwig has such a cult following. And then that like parlayed into us doing another rock opera for the SF Fringe Festival. And I was like, is this going to be what I do the rest of my life? I played in a band with Andrew from Screw 32 called Shadow Boxer, and we did a tour. They had a record before I joined the band that was really good. That was a pretty short-lived thing. And then I did a ton of I did some recording projects. Like I got into like the scene doing some recording down in LA. And I kind of just tried to do everything I could just to try to get that feeling, of like what it was like touring and playing with the connection that we had in American Steel. And I have it with Erica. Like her and I can sit in a room and play music. And it's like no time has passed. But getting that feeling with the group of 4 people has never been the same as with American Steel, which is why we're still playing together.
So then you get the phone call, and then when you come back in, they already gotten signed to Fat, or did that happen after you came back?
Oh, no. Again, that was me. It was me and Rory. So over the years, we did a 7-inch with Fat for the Fat Club. Do you remember when they did that where they sent out and it had like a cute little note in it and everything? So we did that. And that, again, goes back to Sly. Toby, Toby Jag from Red Scare?
Yeah, I met him one time.
So Toby was working for Fat at the time, and he was an American Steel fan. So he was obviously kind of chirping in Mike and Aaron's ears. Tony Sly loved the band, so he was chirping in Mike's ear as well. And so then we ended up doing the 7-inch, and that should have transitioned into us doing a full length with them, which would have been Jagged Thoughts. But Rory was like, Jagged Thoughts, this record's not going to work on Fat. Like Mike is going to hate this record. So they just did the record with Lookout because Lookout was willing to put it out and let the band kind of explore the space. And that was the right thing to do. Like Fat was a bigger label and could have had more reach for the band, but Jagged Thoughts wouldn't have worked on that label at the time. It would now. Fast forward to 2007, we got together and Ryan just said, let's just like play some of our old songs, just practice three or four of our old songs. And we met in the live room at his recording studio that he owns, or he was actually part owner back then. And we got in the live room. So it was really cool because we're like in the like pretty wood, live room of the recording studio, and it sounds killer. We played like one song and it was a little sloppy, but it was like, yeah, that's the feeling right there. And we all felt it. That's what we've been looking for. And then that day, Rory's like, okay, so I've got this new song that I've been kind of messing with. And it turns out it was a complete song, but it was Sons of Avarice, which is the first song on the Fat Records release, Destroy Their Future. And then we were practicing like 4 days a week back then. I was just driving up and we were meeting at the studio. Ryan then got us a practice room in his studio and we were just like hammering out stuff like 4 days a week. I was like, hey, maybe we should like contact some record labels, like Fat, those guys still kind of like us. And they're like, I don't know, like maybe. And then maybe a couple days later, Rory was at the Eagle in San Francisco and Mike is there, Fat Mike is there, and they're having drinks. And Rory's like, yeah, man, so American Steel got back together. We're writing some music. And Mike's like, send me a 5-song demo. We were like, oh, that's great because we have like 6 new songs. So we knocked out 5 songs at Ryan's studio in like a day. We just kind of like, vocals weren't really finished. Rory's just kind of mumbling through parts. Mike was like, awesome. Give me 10 to 15 songs just like this and you guys got a record. Like, sweet. so then, yeah, again, like how fast things move. It was like we got back together in maybe like the summer of 2007, and by October we have a record coming out on Fat.
So by this time, because they signed against me in what, 2002, 3?
Yeah.
2003? So I felt that definitely had this whole shift, just transition where they went from the SoCal sound, and then they got the bands like You Guys and Against Me and the Lawrence Arms, which was, I always call it like this beer punk kind of sound where it's just Americana and fast, but there's not really polished.
Or as they call orgcore.
Orgcore?
Orgcore from punknews.org.
Oh,
they call it
God.
orgcore. Like American Steel and Lawrence Arms are like the orgcore bands.
Well, because it's like you guys had the rougher voice, even though you guys, I mean, Rory's got he's got a singy voice, but he can get that. He's got that rough voice, and so these rough voice sounds came in this whole thing. So it sounds like you guys fit perfectly in what they had been establishing.
Yeah.
Like in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and I think it was Mike realizing that you can't just keep doing all these records that sound the same, and have that like really attacky kick drum, with like, it sounds like a hammer hitting a metal table.
Yeah, the only band that I think is still on Fat is Strung Out, and they can still do that. They never gave up that sound, but all those other bands just kind of fell off of that label.
Well, yeah, that band is so good, like all as musicians. And then like we played Pooza Fest with them, I don't know, like a million years ago. And they were just like the nicest, most complimentary dudes. And it's like, that's what I want to be. I always want to be that like positive, like keep going guy, which I have rad stories about me doing that make me feel good and make it all worthwhile. So we told Mike, like, hey, we're going to record this record and like you can have some input, but we're going to it's going to sound like American Steel 2007. It's going to sound like us. And the production is going to sound mostly like this demo. And he was like, whatever, guys, just record a record that is awesome and you'll be cool. And so he had a little bit. He was always like, more kick drum, more snare drum, make the kick drum more attacky. It was kind of like the typical Fat Wreck things. And we'd be like, okay, and turn it up like, 0.25 dB. Is that good? Here you go. But he was pretty hands off with it for the most part.
What was it stood out to me because it's called Destroy Their Future. And what was the title you wanted to call Rogues March?
Bloody Murder.
Bloody Murder. So I don't know, when I saw the Destroy Their Future, I mean, Bloody Murder is a little bit more aggressive, but Destroy Their Future sounds aggressive. It sounds like you got pushed back initially for the first song or album title, and this one it's like Destroy Their Future. It's not very positive.
Well, and it's not, it's not a very positive record. It is about, it's the same shit we've been singing about, since the band formed. It's like the left and the right aren't in it for you. Punks maybe mostly vote Democrat or be liberal, but it's like in the grand scheme, they're not in it for you. We don't want to destroy the right. It's like destroy all of their future, not our futures, theirs. So I got a lot of messages when that record come out, like, why do you guys want to destroy your future? It's like, no, not our future, their future. That's more our thing. It's like, don't have a title track for the album. It's from a chorus or something like that. Like Jagged Thoughts wasn't a song. It was a chorus from the song Shrapnel. Yeah, Destroy the Future is just, it's super, Rory's very upset about what's going on politically still. It's like, man, am I still singing about this, 15 years later? Like nothing's changed. And now it's like, shit, now it's even worse. Like, how come nothing's changed? Like, why are we still on stage talking about like women's rights? 30 years later of being a band and writing songs about this stuff, and like nothing has changed.
Yeah, in 2007 too, wasn't that Bush was still in office around then? Yeah, so that's when the whole Rock Against Bush comps were out and all that.
Yeah, definitely. And people say that, and they're saying it a lot now. Like, oh well, Trump being in office, it's gonna be great for punk rock music. And it's like, no, dude, you don't get it. Like, punk rock isn't about being against the right. It's about all of the government not being in it for you. So like, yeah, people are gonna be more aware, and they're gonna want to sing the chorus to Sons of Avarice and Say No Gods, No Masters. But sorry, it's about like all of the political oligarchs. It's kind of disingenuous to be like, well, hey, the one benefit of the guy being in office so you don't want to be in office is good music. It's like, no, that's not it.
How did you and Rory figure out how to communicate with each other when you got back in the band?
Therapy. We both grew up. That was part of Ryan when he texted me and said, hey, let's grab dinner after I said I would be willing to do a record. He said, look, this is where we're at. Like, Rory has kind of grown up a little bit, and it used to frustrate me that he'd always be late for band practice. Back then, we would sit around and stew and be angry. But now, if Rory's late for band practice or somebody's late for band practice, we just start practicing without them. And then they roll in and they get set up and then they practice along with us. And we don't get mad about it. If they flake, well, then you're a dick for flaking, but nobody in our band does that. Ryan and I got together and he's like, look, this is where Rory's at. I know your head is in a different place. You don't have to be best friends, but like the past needs to be the past. And we're moving forward now back to being a group of friends. And it happened really naturally. Rory and I would occasionally have little talks on tour and just kind of have heart-to-hearts about things and how we felt. And now we're fantastic friends and get along splendidly.
When you guys get back on the road and you're on and That's backing you, what was it like for you, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, it was funny because when that record came out, all these people are like, oh, these guys sound like Against Me. And it's like, excuse me. But, like Laura went through the same stuff. Like when when Against Me first released records, everybody was like, oh, this band sounds like American Steel, but a little more, whatever, like this. And so they had to tolerate that. So we're like, well, they went through it. So we'll take the lumps here and let people say that we sound like Against Me, which is fine, whatever. It's like, oh, you guys sound like this really great band. It's like, cool. Our first tour, like basically Toby Jag said, I've got a tour for you guys to tour on Destroy Their Future. It's with the Lawrence Arms, the Falcon, and Sundowner. And we're like, are we going to survive like a 6-week tour with all of us together? But Toby set up, we got a tour bus and it was 12 of us on a bus. And the Lawrence Arms, the Falcon, and Sundowner were basically one band that made 3 bands. So like Chris opened the show with Sundowner, and it was Chris with Eli from the Smoking Popes playing bass, and then occasionally some Neil drumming. And then the Falcon would play, and it would be Brendan, Neil, Chris, and Eli, because it would be Dan Andriano, but Dan wasn't there. So Eli was playing guitar and Chris was playing bass. It was like a mixture of those 4 dudes. And then we would play, and then the Lawrence Arms would play. So Neil was playing 3 sets a night on drums. Typical Hennessy. It was like it was no big deal.
Guy's a fucking machine.
Oh, and I tell people this all the time, and I joke with him about it. He had his show clothes, which were like a pair of jeans and a black shirt. He probably still has the exact same outfit. And he would basically take them off to change his clothes after a night of playing 3 sets and just like hang them in the trailer. And so you'd like be loading gear and you'd like touch Neil's like completely saturated blue jeans, like saturated in sweat. And then he would just the next day they'd be mostly dry, maybe. And he'd just put those clothes right back on and play through, his 3 sets and take them off.
Dude, when we went out with them, Brennan and Chris were like, yeah, we just don't shower. And they're like, by day 5, the funk kind of just it goes away or something. I was like, they looked like the gnarliest motherfuckers back then. It was so gross.
Yeah, I'd hate to break it to you guys, but the smell doesn't go away.
Yeah, I was in their van a couple times. I was like, Jesus Christ, guys.
Oh, we called Rory because Rory was that way. Rory's like East Bay punky punk and never showered and never changed his clothes. And he smelled so bad, he called it the magic, which was his terrible smell.
Oh, that's so funny.
But on those early tours, there were 3 guys smoking in the van. And then, so like, it just smelled like BO and cigarettes. And it's not like we're out like, hey, we're trying to meet girls or something like that. It was just like, it was what it was.
Yeah. Also, and the motherfuckers wear like jeans, a t-shirt, and like a jean jacket too. It's usually like the style of some of the guys on tour. And I'm like, ew, man.
And it's 118 degrees in every club you play, and that's the outfit.
I know. I'm like, how the fuck are you doing this in the Nile in Arizona when it's 110, man?
It's so funny. That was literally what I pictured when I was saying it's 118 degrees. I thought of the basement of the Nile.
Yes. Oh my God, the hottest place in the fucking universe.
Our very first show of our very first tour that was in a club. So we played in Las Vegas out in the desert, literally in the desert, where they just set up a generator and would do punk shows, which was phenomenal. That was our very first show of our very first tour. But the second one was upstairs at the Nile with Against All Authority. And it was like, the Nile's huge. There was probably 800 people there. And we're like, yeah, man. And then Will, who promoted the shows in Phoenix back then, gave us like $200. And we were just like out of our minds. Like, is this what it's going to be like? No, not at all. But yeah, that's funny. The Nile, I remember just being so hot under there. And they had stage lights back before stage lights were LEDs. So it was even hotter. Oh my God. And you're wearing jeans. You're wearing jeans and a black hoodie.
When you guys were out with the Lawrence Arms, did Chris quit drinking at this time? Because I know now he doesn't or hardly does at all. It'd be like 11 a.m. and they'd start breaking into like a 30-pack in like 2000.
Oh, it was a drunken mess, that tour. But it was fun. But it was like, man, when we got home, I wanted to sleep for like a week. Because it was just like, 12 of the best friends on this bus, and it was like so like opulent for us to be on a tour bus. But because of the way we were able to work it with like the whole tour was basically like this small group of people, it worked and we could afford it. Yeah, there was no sleeping. Like you had to just figure out how you had to pass out to fall asleep because like however late people are going to stay up singing songs and like an acoustic guitar breaks out and Rory and Brendan are writing Incubus songs and just being totally ridiculous. It was hard. Like, yeah, it was party the whole time. Fortunately, we weren't doing any drugs. So it was booze and maybe some people that smoked weed, but it was just booze. And yeah, and like all those venues, like every day there would be like, 5 cases of beer waiting for us. That whole mentality where like, oh, well, Lawrence Arms, American Steel, they're like a party band. So we're going to drink with them and we're going to put shots on stage and all that. It makes me realize like, God, of course, nothing's going to change. But like, man, if I did those short shows sober, like I probably would have played a whole lot better, huh? But we were so smashed by the time we got on stage, like every day. It was like a 45-day tour with like maybe 3 days off. And those were driving days.
How tight were you guys when you played live?
Oh my God, you know how tight you are. It's like you were locked in. Like there, you can do no wrong. And that's why you can party and drink because you're just so locked in. It's just muscle memory. What I've always wanted to do, and we've never really pulled off, is like, let's do like 6 months of touring and then record a record. Go out and tour on all of your new songs, even if you're not playing them all live, but have them in your back pocket and rehearse them while you're tour tight, and then get home and record a record while you're tour tight. Would just be so awesome, but also totally impossible to really pull off logistically, but still be cool.
So you're touring on Destroy Their Future, and then 2009, you guys put out Dear Friends and Gentle Hearts. And I know Fat's, they're a handshake, right? They're a one deal handshake, or they actually have paperwork?
We had full contracts but they were, again, one record deals 1 year. We're not allowed to put music out with anybody else for 1 year after the release date, right? So it's nothing. It's like and again, they were a super, super fair deal on their, in our favor type deal, and super generous.
Were you guys able to live off of the band, like pay rent and things like that? Or did you have to go get jobs when you got home?
No, because we lived in the San Francisco Bay Area where it's impossible to live like that. So we all had jobs, working restaurants, bartending. John always worked in kind of like the book literary scene. He worked in different bookstores and in like warehouses. Ryan was recording bands and working at like Cinder Block, printing T-shirts. I was working retail in a bicycle store. So we all kind of had these gigs that we could leave and tour on, but none of us were really advancing any careers, either musically or professionally. So no, and a lot of people think that, like, and I got an email from somebody, totally side mission here. I got an Instagram message from somebody that's like, hey, me and my so-and-so, we want to put out some records, and we're hoping like maybe you guys could fund our label. And I was like, what do you mean fund your label? Like, she's like, loan us like some money to get the label on its feet. And I was like, we are all barely paying our rent, dude. What do you mean fund your label? And she was under the impression that like, oh, you're on Fat, you're just like this big rich rock star. And it's like, no, that's not how it works, man. Not at all.
That's ballsy. What year was that?
2024. It was literally last year.
Oh my God. Like, do you realize that no bands make money? Like,
no, people really, really think like, I remember when we signed to Fat, this guy that I worked with at the bar was like, so what do they give you? Like, what is it, like $200,000? And I was like, excuse me, what? I was like, take like 2 zeros off of that, man. Like $200,000? No. There was definitely opportunity to do stuff like that with like dopey major labels, some A&R guys like, oh, I really like your stuff. I was like, no, we want to own our music.
So when you guys put out the last record, how many tours did you go on before you broke up?
Well, we didn't break up.
Or you paused?
Yeah, and the funny thing is the pause just ended up being longer than we really intended. It just kind of like life got in the way. And then we're like, oh, shit, we haven't played a show in like 5 years. Maybe we should play a show. So what happened was John does he's always been very creative other than just music. John, the bass player, he had a letterpress shop in Oakland, the old hand crank letterpress printing machines.
Oh, yeah.
Which are very hip and in. And they met I'm going to mess up the story, but basically they met somebody and then they ended up getting offered a temporary position in Berlin to like teach at the school. So they're like, hey, John's like, hey, my wife and I are going to move to Berlin for like 6 months to do this teaching gig. And we're like, hell yeah, go for it. Band's on hold, dude. Go do this really cool opportunity. And he still lives there. Right, this many years later. They love it. They fell in love with living in the EU and Germany and all that, and it's just really worked for them. The deal was always like, oh, well, I'll come out and we'll meet for shows and stuff like that. And it's just life just kind of got in the way. And then in 2012, we played like our quote last show. In 2018, Toby got a hold of us and was like, hey, the Lawrence Arms are wondering if you guys will play their War on Christmas show. We're like, maybe, let's work this out. And at the exact same time, Lisa from New Noise magazine was having some sort of anniversary, and she's like, hey, would you guys play like a New Noise anniversary show? And we were like, wait a minute. So we booked those on opposing weekends. So it was like the War on Christmas was like the 6th and 7th, and then the following weekend we did the New Noise shows.
How were those?
They were phenomenal because we did 2 shows with the War on Christmas. It was, just opening for Lawrence Arms. And then we had a headlining show for the matinee on Sunday. Super fun. And then we sold out 2 nights at the Ivy Room, which is a small like bar venue just north of Berkeley, for those New Noise type shows. We're like, okay, well, Toby, let's play some more shows. Book us some more shows. So we ended up playing like 4 shows with Hot Water Music, 2 in LA and 2 in San Francisco. We played the Fest with Jawbreaker. Oh my God, that show, Jawbreaker, Stiff Little Fingers, and a bunch of great bands. Yeah. Like, yeah, sure, we'll play that show. And we're like, and it was 2019. So we're like, Toby, let's keep going, man. This is great. We're having fun. We're not losing money, which is always our like baseline. Can we do this without losing any money? And so Toby was digging in and starting to book shows for us. And we're talking about playing some festivals in New York. And then like March of 2020 happens and the rug just got pulled completely out from under us. And, it wasn't until last year that we're like, hey, maybe let's do this again. This is kind of fun. So we played Fest in Gainesville. And then the war on Christmas, and then we just played this show at Bottom of the Hill for Ryan's birthday, and they've all been so fun that we're like, okay, well, let's keep going.
Well, do you want it to be like that, where it's spread out like that, or would you actually get in a van and go for a couple weeks or a month or so?
I would love to, from an emotional level, I would love to get in a van and do a van tour as mature adults and see how we could do it. But I know that every band that we're friendly with, unless they're making a lot of money, you only go on tour as a promotional thing, right? You're not making any money, and maybe you're even losing money on most tours because it's just so expensive, gas and hotels and rental vans and stuff like that. So it would take a lot for us to really get out for a couple weeks, just because we all have lives and families and jobs, and we don't want to like lose our shirt for 2 weeks, come home and be like, cool, that cost us $5,000. And we don't have a label to be like, here's tour support.
Well, actually, I was wondering about because Toby, he went off to do Red Scare, and because he was at Fat, and then he went to Red Scare, so he left Fat to do Red Scare with Brendan, right?
I don't know the exact details, but yes, I don't know how much Brendan was involved in that, but Red Scare is Toby's thing, yeah.
Because you keep mentioning you're calling him and he's setting you up tours. Is he like your tour manager?
So yeah,
your booker?
He is our booking agent now. So we were with Corey Christopher for a long time, and she books like Imagine Dragons and Janet Jackson and the Lawrence Arms.
Okay.
And when we had started getting back to playing shows in 2018, I called her and I was like, hey, I've been like self-booking these shows. Do we owe you a fee? Like, I'm not even having you send like riders or anything. And she's like, I don't have time to even like send the rider. So no, you don't owe me a fee. And then Toby was like, I'll book you guys. Like, Corey obviously doesn't have time to book you guys. And so I just asked her, I was like, hey, do you mind if Toby just starts booking us? And she's like, yeah, sure. If you guys blow up and for some reason have some one-hit wonder, maybe consider coming back to me. Right. But she like gave us her blessing. So then Toby, he works for AMG, Atomic Music Group. So he's our booking agent now, and we pay him a fee to handle the stuff that we absolutely do not want to deal with.
I never understood all that, how much things cost. If you have a booking agent or a manager, if a band is not making shit, how do you pay these fucking people?
So you're paying a percentage, and that's what I don't get is these bands that tour with so many people, and it's like, how are you feeding them and hoteling them? And it's just like, it's silly. But Toby, we pay a percentage, 10% of the guarantee, right? So if we play a show and get paid $1,000, they get $100. Toby gets a percentage and AMG gets a percentage.
Oh, wow.
Because he works for them, right? So he's getting a commission on their fee. He's going to put in about as much work for us as he's going to get. Well, he obviously puts in a lot more work than he's getting back from us. But, he's not going to like spend his whole life trying to book American Steel if we're just like getting these small shows. But he is phenomenal. I can text him and be like, hey, man, what do you think about playing this? And he'll be like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's a good idea, but I'll submit you if you want. Having that personal touch of like a friend that you can just text and bounce stuff off of. Plus, he's so involved in like our little bubble of a scene that he's super knowledgeable. We're like, should we play this, Riot Fest this year? He's like, why don't you play a couple more shows and maybe play Riot Fest next year? I think you'd really benefit from doing it next year. Like, they'll probably have a better lineup next year anyway. Like, he has really good insight to things, and that's invaluable to us. And then just like, because AMG is a real entity business, we can get deposits for shows. Or if somebody wants to not pay you, Toby can call them and say, hey, it's really unfortunate that you don't want to pay American Steel, but that Teenage Bottle Rocket show you got coming up in 2 weeks, we could always change venues, and kind of pull that card on them. It is super helpful. That's a fee I'm willing to pay as a booking agent. But like, what do I need a manager come on the road for me to do that I can't just do myself? I know how to book a hotel room. I've got an app on my phone that can do that. I can talk to a promoter and get paid. And if it's going sideways, I can call Toby. I think a merch person is super valuable to have on the road because they're literally taking in potentially half or more of the money that you're going to make that day. So a trustworthy merch person is super worth it to have, but you generally just pay them like a flat fee. You're not giving a percentage.
you guys dealt with the whole having to give a percentage of the merch sales to the clubs?
Yeah, I have some sweet advice for bands about that, which I assume no promoters are listening to this. But what we would always do, first of all, they'll walk up and be like, okay, it's time for a merch count. And I would just like have the boxes on the floor and be like, okay, it's right there. Because they don't want to count it. They want you to count it. And they'd be like, okay, so how much do you have? And I'd be like, we have X shirts, X records. Okay, cool. And they trust you, and they know looking at like 4 boxes of shirts is roughly 60 shirts or whatever. I would always leave merch in the van or the trailer. And then at the end of the night, I would bring in a big stack of shirts and a big stack of records. And then we'd do a count out together and be like, oh man, we only sold like 9 shirts. So that's, that's $45.
Oh, that's awesome.
And a lot of clubs like the Metro in Chicago only charges you a merch percentage if you sell over $500 worth of merch. So they came to me, at the end of the night, hey, we got to settle up for merch. I was like, oh man, we had such a rough night in merch. She go, how much did you do? I was like, $475. Oh yeah, well our cap is 500. I knew that. If it's a club that is independent, if it's like Bottom of the Hill, who is owned by Lynn and a couple of people, like if they asked for a merch percentage, which they wouldn't ever, we would totally pay them because they're a small independent club. But like some big Clear Channel venue can blow it out their ass. They're not getting our merch money.
Yeah, I've had this conversation on a few episodes. I think it's the biggest crock of shit that a club takes any fucking money. Because I always say this, I'm like, well, then the band should get a cut of the bar.
Boom.
Because no one be there drinking.
Right there.
Yeah.
That is it. And we got a cut of the bar at the Bottom of the Hill show because she knew that we would bring in a ton of people drinking. So that was kind of how she was able to pay us like a reasonable amount of money, because we're also like, well, we don't want the tickets to be more than $20 to get into the show. And it's a small capacity venue. So, and our ethos here is we always let the openers play longer sets, 30-minute set thing. Like they're going to play 40, and we're going to pay the openers like a reasonable amount of money. So we did a tour with Alkaline Trio, and it was totally one of those things. Like Matt and Rory lived together when Matt moved to California from Chicago. They lived together for a couple years. Yeah, what a little songwriting household that was.
Oh, I can imagine.
And it was great. They would totally bounce songs off each other and stuff like that. It was super cool. So like these are our bros, right? But they have a manager who's dictating things. We got paid $250 a night to go on this like House of Blues type tour with them, playing House of Blues size venues for like a month. They were getting like $12,000 a night, and we were getting paid $250. And then they're Alkaline Trio, so they're selling merch like crazy, and we had like 2 designs and a CD, and we were doing like $100 in merch a night. So we just ate it. We ate up all of our tour support that we had for Dear Friends and Gentle Hearts. No, for Destroy Their Future. We ate up all of our tour support that we had for that just to like pay to go on that tour. So we've always said like, we're not going to be those guys. We're going to pay the opening bands like at least enough money to play the show. So that's what we did at Bottom of the Hill. But yeah, I don't get like if a venue wants, and I say that all the time, like, okay, do I get a percentage of the bar? If you're giving me this like broken folding table with like one light and you want me to give you 10% or 20% of my merch sales, you're insane.
Yeah, and I have to put it up on the wall, organize everything, sitting there and selling, being a merch person. It's there's so much in there like, oh yeah, well we just gave you a little spot to sell. It's such bullshit. I think it's absolutely fucking insane.
Yeah, it's dumb.
How much more can you fucking milk from a band these days?
Well, yeah, the people make everybody around you. I think I heard you talk about this on one of your interviews. Is everybody's making money except the band. Man, I have friends that tour with bigger bands, and it's like, wait, you're making $450 a day plus a per diem plus all your meals and hotels and everything are covered. I need to get into the like road crew business.
Uh-huh. Yeah. You're the one who gets paid.
But I like playing shows, so that's the problem.
It's way more fun to get up on stage and play and then say like, all right, thanks for packing everything up, guys.
I mean, there's nothing like it. Like if that is what you enjoy doing, which is obviously what me and the guys and you and you know all of our peers, it's like what we like doing. There's nothing comparable to that. It is so fun and so rewarding to do. Whether you're playing to 5 people, you know, in the middle of Kansas, or you're playing to like 5,000 people at some festival, it's so fun. It's great.
The last 3 questions, or before I ask the last 2 questions to close it out, I started asking this a while ago. Is there a story you'd like to tell that you've never told in an interview before that you'd like to tell now?
We're so open. We're such an open book as a band that I think our stories have been told over and over to each other or at parties, or we do so few interviews. But one of the things that I have always tried to do, like the music scene and even the punk scene can be super gatekeepy. You know, like when we're talking about going on a lookout, people are like, oh, I don't know, like, why would you want to go on lookout? Like, what do you want to do? People told us we smiled too much when we played, so we started smiling less. Like, really, so I always wanted to be like super welcoming and super equitable. And I'm always really encouraging, like, hey, I have a band. Like, great, go play shows, go out and, you know, record and play music and go on tour. And I always want to be super supportive. And we're playing it. The Echoplex, whatever it's called in LA with Hot Water Music. And this person comes up to the merch table and is like, hey man, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in years. And I just wanted to tell you that you played a basement show in Long Island and you took all this time out to tell me, like, and be supportive and tell me that I should keep playing and put my nose down and really keep playing shows and stuff like that. And that really meant a lot to me. And I was like, oh, cool. You know, that's just who I am. That's just what I do. And I'm super proud of you. What's your band called? And they were like, oh, my band is called Warriors. And I was like, you're more popular than my band. It's like the story of my life. All these people that are in bands that are more popular than us are like, you were so helpful in motivating us and doing this and that. And it's just like, good. Now you need to carry on that legacy of being more positive. And that isn't a story that I've never told anybody necessarily, but like meeting Lauren, and they were like, you really inspired me to go on and keep playing. And it was really sweet of you. It's kind of what it's all about. You know, like, I don't know why there's so many rules around being in a band, and oh, well, you'll never be able to do that. Like, oh, why'd you do a record with Fat or whatever? Like, just let me do what I want to do and hammer it out and have fun and be equitable and care about each other.
Yeah, the majority of people, I think, that say stuff like that, aren't even in a band.
And
they have a full-time corporate job where they're getting their paycheck deposited every 2 weeks. I mean, whoever who does that's fine. But still, it's like the person who has that backing. And I always make fun of myself when I was 16 calling bands sellouts for being on like a major label, as I'm living rent-free, getting all my food bought for me by my mom in an air condition. It's I had all of those luxuries, and I'm sitting here going, "Let me tell you about life." It's like, shut the fuck up.
Oh man, and the whole thing, like the backlash with Green Day when they signed to a major, and people were like, they sold out, and it's like that album sounds exactly like Green Day sounds. It's just like a better recording. Like, what do you mean they sold out? Like that record is great. Like, no, they're just like reaching a bigger market. Like they outgrew their current record label, so they moved to the next one. It's not like, and because they were in that whole punk rock scene, they knew to not sign like some dumb 5 record deal.
Well, yeah. Also, the person saying that or who has said that, it's they're in whatever stage they are in their job. It's like, so are you gonna stay here, or are you gonna move up and make more money? It's the same fucking thing, dude. I don't hear it a lot anymore. I don't think I ever. I mean, I'm also in my 40s, so I'm not surrounded by people that are saying shit like that. But I'm sure it exists. I'm just glad it's not around me, because I'd be like, all right, sit down.
It may exist. Yeah, take a seat. The grown-ups are talking. But I don't think so, because everything is just so marketed with social media and TikTok and just how everything is about making a buck. You have these friends that you went to high school with that are like, the reason I use the blah, blah, blah inserts in my shoes, and they're putting like an Amazon Associates link. It's like, can't you just like post some pictures of your camping trip or whatever, like how much are you making off those Associates links? Like 38 cents a year? And then they're telling you that your third record isn't as good as your first record. And it's like, well, we didn't make the record for you. We made it for us. And we're glad that you like it, but like we literally made this record for us,
I mean, I'm definitely one of those people that if I listen to a record that's later on, sometimes I'm like, you can't have that same fire that you had when you first started. And I also don't expect that. It's rare that I listen to a band where by their 5th record, I'm still fucking in it. There's like maybe 2 bands out there that I love like that. I don't sit there and go like, oh, they changed. It's like, no, I know that. I'm just like, this record isn't for me, but that's just me. And I'm not saying that it sucks or they suck. It's just, I just fell out of it after a certain amount of time. So that's fine.
Yeah, not everybody can do like the AC/DC formula, and write very similar records across the board that are all somehow still really good. Like that's something truly special, but like who wants to do that? Like I don't want to keep recording songs or writing songs that sound like our first record. That was a different time of our lives and how we felt then.
And it makes more sense too when you see them play live, because then they pick from each album, put it together. You're going, this works great because I know the songs and it fits here, and I would have expected this song to go after this one or whatever of how they formulated it.
But our most popular songs are easily off of Destroy Their Future, which is our 4th record. And then after that, it would be Dear Friends and Gentle Hearts. Like as far as like what I see on plays on Spotify, on the Spotify for artists and Apple Music and stuff like that, and what people are yelling at us to play at shows, it's like it's those last 2 records that we have to kind of play the bulk of. And I know it bums people out that want to hear like the punky punk Rogues March and first album, but sorry, 95% of the people there actually want to hear the other ones.
Yeah, I think Face to Face years ago, they went on tour and they said, all right, we're going to have you guys make our set list for us. So everyone voted, and I think they curated the set list based on what the fans were voting on.
I would love to do that. That'd
be cool. I mean, that's easy. That's so easy with Instagram. You could have like a Google form or something set up, and you could just have people link to it, and then.
But the thing is we've got like 3,000 followers on Instagram. Like we don't pump our social media, so it's like, okay, well, there's going to be like 9 people that are going to go fill out that form.
Yeah. Well, then you're like, all right, well, only 9 of you came, so we're gonna just pick lightly from this list, and then we're gonna do our own thing.
We did a show somewhere in the Midwest, and there was literally 4 people there. And there was these 2 dudes that were like huge American Steel fans. They're like, we're so glad, we're so stoked. And we basically just like hung out with those guys. So as it's leading up, like there's the opening bands, Rory went over to these dudes with a Sharpie and some blank paper and was like, hey, write 12 of our songs out for a set list for us. And those dudes sat there for like probably a good 45 minutes to an hour, like really figuring out what songs they wanted to put on and trying to be like, what's a good opener? Just like the same thing we do when we write a set list. And we literally went up and played the set list that those dudes wrote for us because it was
Oh,
like,
that's so cool.
there's 4 people here and 2 of them wrote the set list for us. Like, why not, man?
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. That's a good story. All right, last 2 questions before I ask the last one. What would you like to plug? It could be about you, it could be about a friend or a cause, it could be about all of them.
It's not a general thing, but just mental health awareness and taking care of yourself and your friends. I obviously went through in the last couple of years, like really diagnosing ADHD, which everybody's like, of course you have it, dude. But like figuring it out and getting medicated for it and practicing every day, like tools to make it better. And then quitting drinking, which was a piece of that to try to like hone in my life. No more self-medicating. Being aware of your friends having trouble and reaching out with a phone call or a text like, hey, dude, how you doing? Talking to people openly. Like, I love that now people openly talk about going to therapy or like the meds they're taking and what works for them. We're having rehearsals and one of the guys in the band was like, hey, man, I got to go do like a 50-minute my therapy. It's going to cost me too much to cancel this appointment. I'm just going to go do it real quick. And we were like, cool, bro, go do it. We'll sit here and work on something else while you go do that. And then they came back in and we're like, all right, cool, man, let's go. And we went back into band practice. Like, I think 10 years ago, that would have been like super uncomfortable and taboo. And I'm glad that it's, mental health awareness. Like, how many friends have all of us lost to like people self-medicating with alcohol and pills and, trying to cope with depression or anxiety and stuff like that. I want it to keep moving forward with like being open and reaching out to friends. And social media, again, helps that because you can see people's lives unfolding in front of you. So I want to plug looking out for each other and just mental health awareness, just like taking care of each other. And like, I want to stop losing friends that are in their 40s, and have a whole life to live ahead of them, but don't, because they're not getting the help that a friend could be there for.
All right, dude. Last question and then stay on. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
Man, there are so many good things about the punk rock scene, but I think just how everything is super equitable. There's no there, like I said, the punk scene and music scene in general is super like gatekeepy, but like there isn't a thing like, oh, that band is all girls. Nobody cares. Like, cool. There's 4 women in a band. That's amazing. We are going to support you no matter what. This person's in a wheelchair, or this person is having a tough time booking shows. Like, we're all here to help each other and be equals. And there's a lot of bands that are really popular and make a lot of money that are still super supportive, way, way, way down the food chain. There's a lot of super egomaniacs out there too, but everybody is so supportive. Like Green Day, going back to Green Day, they're still like pumping money into Gilman to keep Gilman alive or keep their sound system up or whatever. And it's great. That's the way the punk scene is. And my wife works in the corporate world. She takes her like feminist and equitable ethos, punk rock ethos, into the corporate world, trying to change little things here and there. And I do it volunteering I'm a stay-at-home dad. I wear that badge very proudly, and I do not shy away from the fact that I stay home with the kids. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to do it. But I take that ethos into the school. You hear people say stuff like, well, girls can't do that. It's like, no, you're wrong. They can. The best one is when older people will say like, well, how does your wife feel about you being home with the kids all day? It's like, well, we're equals, so we're like a team. And that comes from being in the punk scene and knowing that we are all kind of one together. It never was really a big deal for me to be my wife to be the primary breadwinner and me to be the stay-at-home dad. Like, that's just the way it is, man. Or I'm the one that's doing this podcast today as opposed to Rory, who normally does like the print interviews because he has the stuff to say about the band, whatever. Like, we're all equals. And that's what I get from the punk scene. It's just that community and that togetherness that is all about, and that's never going away. That's going to be with me forever.